My name is Judith Owens, and I'm 56 years old. The whole waiting room went quiet when my cousin leaned close and said, "You'll never be a mother, Judith. You're too old for miracles." I felt everyone staring, waiting for me to break. But instead, I smiled, because she had no idea what I was hiding. No idea that behind that clinic door, the truth waiting for me would burn her words into ashes. As I sat in that sterile waiting room, the soft hum of the air conditioner was the only thing breaking the silence. The faint scent of antiseptic mixed with the aroma of cheap coffee. I had been in hospital waiting rooms more times than I could count, but that day felt different, like something final, something defining. My fingers trembled as I clutched the edge of my purse, staring down at the appointment slip with my name typed neatly across the top. Sitting across from me, legs crossed and smirk in place, was my younger cousin Brielle, only 34 and already mother to 2. Her words sliced through the tension like a knife. "Judith," she said, almost laughing, "you'll never be a mother. You missed your chance years ago." Her voice carried through the room, and I felt the eyes of the other patients flick toward us, then away, just as quickly. I wanted to shrink into myself, disappear, become invisible. But I forced a polite smile, as if her words hadn't pierced the softest part of me. I had heard it before, from relatives, from doctors, from the cruel whisper of time itself. Yet somehow, hearing it from Brielle burned the most. Maybe because she'd always loved reminding me of what she had that I didn't. Maybe because I used to help raise her when she was a child, braiding her hair, cheering at her school plays, holding her when she cried. And now she looked at me with pity disguised as superiority. Her laughter echoed in my head as my mind drifted backward, years into the past. I saw myself at 29, sitting in another clinic, my then-husband Daniel gripping my hand as a doctor explained that my pregnancy had ended. Again. I could still hear the soft tremor in Daniel's voice when he said, "We'll try again." But again became one more time, and eventually it became silence. The miscarriages chipped away at both of us. Each one took a little piece of my spirit until there was barely anything left to give. Eventually, Daniel left. He said he couldn't keep watching me destroy myself with hope. I didn't blame him. I barely recognized the woman I'd become back then. Bitter, broken, and alone. I tried to move on. I told myself that motherhood wasn't the only measure of a woman's worth. I filled my life with work, community, and the quiet comfort of solitude. But deep down, a small part of me never stopped longing for a miracle. So here I was, decades later, sitting in this clinic again. Not because I wanted to chase an impossible dream, but because I wanted closure, or maybe one. Final chance to believe that my story wasn't over yet. Brielle sighed dramatically, scrolling on her phone. "You know, Judith, there's still time to get a cat or something. They say pets help women your age feel less lonely." I didn't respond. I'd learned that silence was sometimes the most powerful defense. She wouldn't understand. She hadn't lived through the empty nurseries, the baby clothes packed away, or the ache of holding someone else's child while pretending your heart wasn't breaking. I glanced around the waiting room. A young couple sat in the corner, whispering nervously, their hands intertwined. Across from them, a woman in her 40s looked at a pregnancy pamphlet with guarded hope. The room was full of silent prayers, unspoken fears, and fragile dreams, and I was just one of them. Inside, my thoughts wrestled between hope and humiliation. Was Brielle right? Was this foolish? Was I clinging to something that time had already stolen from me? Then I remembered something my mother once said before she passed away. "Miracles don't have expiration dates, Judith." The memory of her voice steadied me, a reminder that hope wasn't weakness, it was defiance. I sat up straighter, forcing my hands to stop trembling. If this appointment brought bad news, then at least I'd face it on my own terms. Just then, the nurse stepped into the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Owens," she called gently, "the doctor will see you now." I could feel Brielle's smirk before I saw it. "Good luck with your fantasy," she muttered under her breath. I turned toward her, offering a small, calm smile. "Thank you," I said softly, my tone carrying something she couldn't name. Maybe it was peace. Maybe it was defiance. She frowned, clearly irritated that I hadn't snapped or cried, but inside, My heart thudded so loudly it felt like the whole room could hear it. I rose slowly, smoothing my skirt and lifting my chin. As I walked toward the door, I caught my reflection in the polished glass panel. Older, yes, but stronger than I had ever been. I realized that no one, not even Brielle, could define what motherhood meant for me. The nurse held the door open. I stepped through, taking a slow, steady breath. The hallway smelled faintly of disinfectant and lavender, a strange, comforting combination. "Mrs. Owens," came a familiar voice ahead. It was Dr. Fenton, her tone calm but serious. "Your results are ready." My pulse spiked, my breath catching in my throat. I nodded, clutching my purse tighter. Somewhere behind me, I could almost feel Brielle's eyes burning into my back, but I didn't look back, because something inside me whispered that whatever came next, whatever those results said, was going to change everything. The doctor's voice calls her in. "Mrs. Owens, your results are ready." And Judith rises, heart pounding. The door closed softly behind me, sealing away the distant chatter of the waiting room. My hands felt damp as I clutched my purse, knuckles white against the leather strap. The small consultation room was quiet except for the faint tick of a wall clock. A framed photo of a newborn's tiny hand wrapped around a mother's finger hung on the wall, and something inside me ached as I looked at it. I had seen that image countless times, in magazines and advertisements, but this time it felt different, closer, almost taunting. "Good morning, Judith." Dr. Fenton's voice pulled me back to the present. She was a calm, middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a tone that always managed to soothe me, no matter how anxious I was. She motioned for me to sit, her movements deliberate and gentle, as though she knew how fragile I felt inside. "Good morning, doctor," I murmured, forcing a small smile as I sat down. My fingers brushed the edge of my file on the desk, a thick folder filled with decades of heartbreak and medical history. She sat across from me, adjusting her glasses. "I know waiting for results is never easy," she began softly. "I've reviewed everything from your latest tests, and I'd like to go through them carefully with you." My throat felt tight. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She flipped open the folder, revealing charts, scans, and lab reports. I'd grown used to those papers, rows of numbers and medical jargon that always seemed to spell the same thing: disappointment. As she spoke, I caught glimpses of my past flashing like broken film reels. The IVF cycles that drained my savings, the hormone treatments that left me dizzy and moody. The nights Daniel and I sat on the floor of our empty nursery, holding each other in silence. And later, the adoption interviews that ended with rejection letters, always the same polite phrasing. "We're sorry, but your application is not a fit for this opportunity." All those years of trying, all the needles, the medications, the tears, I thought I had accepted that motherhood wasn't part of my story. Until now. Dr. Fenton cleared her throat gently, bringing me back. Her expression was unreadable, and that scared me more than anything. "Judith," she said, her voice measured, "these results are unusual." My stomach dropped. I gripped the edge of my seat. "Unusual?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her eyes flicking between the papers and my face. "Yes. When we performed your most recent embryo transfer, we prepared for a very low probability of success, given your age and medical history." I swallowed hard. I'd heard that phrase before. Very low probability of success. It was always followed by words like, "unfortunately," or "I'm sorry." "But," she continued, leaning forward slightly, "it seems this time something remarkable happened." For a moment I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out her words. What do you mean?" She smiled softly, the kind of smile that comes from genuine joy. "Judith, the embryo took. The implantation was successful. You're pregnant." Time froze. I stared at her, waiting for her to correct herself to add a "but" or "however." When she didn't, my eyes filled before I could stop them. My hands flew to my mouth as the first sob broke free. "I'm pregnant?" I whispered, barely able to form the word. "Yes," Dr. Fenton said warmly, handing me a tissue. "You are." It felt impossible, unreal, the kind of miracle that happened to other people in movies or news articles, not to me. Not after everything I'd lost. I pressed the tissue to my eyes, trembling. After all these years, her expression softened. I know how much this means to you. I nodded, still crying silently. Doctor, I thought it was hopeless. Everyone told me to stop trying, even my own family. Dr. Fenton's eyes held compassion. Hope has its own timeline, Judith. Medicine can only do so much. The rest, sometimes it's just life finding a way. I let out a shaky laugh between tears. I don't even know what to say. I was so sure this was going to be another disappointment. Sometimes, she said, the body surprises us. I leaned back in the chair, overwhelmed. Memories of all the times I'd been told I'd missed my chance flooded back, each one of them fading now, like distant echoes. For the first time in years, I felt like the world was opening instead of closing. As I wiped my tears, I thought of Brielle, her smug smile, her cutting words. You'll never be a mother. How easily she'd said it, as if she were predicting my life's ending. But she didn't know what was about to come. I looked up at Dr. Fenton, my voice trembling but steady. Thank you, I whispered. You have no idea what this means. She smiled. You don't have to thank me. You did the hard part. For a few blissful seconds, I allowed myself to imagine it, holding a baby, whispering lullabies, seeing a tiny face that was mine. The dream I had buried for decades was no longer just a dream. It was alive. But before I could sink fully into that joy, I noticed something in Dr. Fenton's expression shift. She hesitated, glancing back at the report. Her tone grew careful again. Judith, she began slowly, before we go any further, there's something else you need to know. The words cut through the air like a blade. My breath caught in my throat. The room suddenly felt smaller, the ticking clock louder. What is it? I asked quietly. She folded her hands, her expression unreadable once more. It's about your pregnancy, she said softly. And it's something we need to discuss right away. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. Because just when I thought my miracle had arrived without a shadow, I saw one forming in Dr. Fenton's eyes. The doctor warns her, but, Judith, there's something else about your pregnancy you should know. Dr. Fenton's expression softened as she leaned forward, resting her hands gently on the desk. Judith, I need to be honest with you, she said. This pregnancy is a miracle, but it's also high risk. Her words settled over me like a heavy blanket. I had prepared myself for bad news, but now that joy and fear were tangled together, I didn't know how to feel. She continued carefully. At your age, complications can arise unexpectedly. Your blood pressure, heart function, and hormone levels need to be monitored closely. You must avoid any kind of emotional stress. No arguments, no physical strain, no anxiety triggers. Your body and your mind both need peace. I nodded slowly, trying to absorb every word. Peace. It was such a fragile thing in my world. I understand, I whispered. I'll do whatever it takes. Dr. Fenton smiled faintly. I know you will. You've already proven you're stronger than most. That night, as I lay in bed, her warning echoed in my mind. Avoid stress. It was simple advice in theory, but nearly impossible in practice, especially with family like mine. Brielle's voice haunted my thoughts, even in the quiet darkness. Her laughter, her cutting tone, her certainty that I'd never be a mother. If she knew the truth now, if she knew what was growing inside me, she would twist it into something cruel. She always did. So I made a decision that night, one that felt both brave and lonely. I would keep my pregnancy a secret. Not forever, just until it was safe, until my baby and I were strong enough to face whatever storm might come. The following weeks became a strange kind of double life. During the day, I went to work, smiled politely at neighbors, attended family gatherings where Brielle's chatter filled the room. But inside, I carried a sacred secret, my tiny miracle. At night, I attended prenatal appointments quietly, slipping into the clinic without telling anyone. Dr. Fenton became my only confidant, the only person who knew the truth. Each visit, she'd print a new sonogram photo for me to take home. Each time I saw that faint, flickering heartbeat, I felt something heal inside me that I thought was lost forever. At home, I began a ritual. Every evening before bed, I'd open a small leather-bound journal I'd bought years ago and start writing letters addressed to my little one. "Dear baby," I wrote one night, "you don't know it yet, but you've already saved me. You've made me feel alive again." Sometimes I'd press the sonogram photo between the pages, tracing it with trembling fingers. I'd whisper goodnight to the small life inside me, promising to protect it from everything and everyone that once hurt me. Meanwhile, Brielle's voice still found its way into my world. At family dinners, she'd laugh with Nora and our aunts, tossing barbed comments my way under the guise of jokes. "So, Judith," she'd say with that sugary smile, "any new hobbies lately? Or are you still chasing fairy tales?" I'd simply sip my tea and smile back. "Some dreams are worth chasing," I'd reply softly. She'd roll her eyes, pretending to laugh, but I could see the irritation flicker across her face. She hated when I didn't react. My sister Nora, always the peacemaker, tried to mend the rift. "Don't let her get under your skin, Jude," she'd whisper to me later. "You know how Brielle is. She thrives on attention." I'd nod, grateful for her kindness. Nora was gentle, patient, but even she didn't know my secret. I couldn't risk it. Secrets, I'd learned, were safer when they stayed small, kept close, guarded by silence. Still, as the weeks passed, I began to notice subtle changes in my body. The faint nausea in the mornings, the tenderness in my chest, the way my heart seemed to flutter with both excitement and fear. My miracle was real, and it was growing. Then, one afternoon, everything nearly unraveled. I had stopped by Nora's house for a family lunch. Brielle was there, as usual, draped across the couch with her phone in hand. I kept my purse beside me, tucked under the table as I helped Nora clear dishes. When I returned to the living room, my heart stopped. Brielle was standing near the window, my purse open on the armchair beside her. In her hand was the small black and white sonogram photo from my last appointment. Her eyes darted up to mine, wide with disbelief. "What is this?" she demanded. I froze, words catching in my throat. "Brielle, put that down." She stared at the image, her face twisting with something between shock and fury. "You're not serious. You're pregnant?" I moved toward her slowly, my pulse pounding. "That's private," I said firmly. "You had no right to go through my things." She let out a low, incredulous laugh. "Private? Oh, come on, Judith. You're 56. This is insane. You actually think this is going to work?" I snatched the photo from her trembling hand, slipping it back into my purse. "It already has," I whispered. For a brief moment, silence filled the room, thick and electric. Brielle's eyes darted over my face, searching for weakness. But instead of saying anything else, she turned away, jaw tight. As I walked toward the door, I heard her whisper under her breath, her voice low and venomous. "She's not keeping this from me. Not after everything." I stopped cold, my hand tightening on the doorknob. A chill ran down my spine. I didn't know exactly what she meant, but the tone in her voice was enough to make my stomach twist. I looked back just once. She was staring out the window, her reflection warped in the glass. Eyes hard, lips curled in anger. In that moment, I realized my secret wasn't safe anymore. Brielle whispers to herself, "She's not keeping this from me. Not after everything." For a few blissful days after that confrontation, Brielle kept her distance. I almost believed she'd decided to let things be, that maybe she'd surprise me with a rare act of decency, but I should have known better. People like Brielle didn't let go of envy. They fed on it, let it fester until it poisoned everyone around them. It started with whispers, little things that found their way back to me through family and neighbors. My aunt called one morning, her voice tight with concern. "Judith, honey, are you feeling all right? Brielle said you've been confused lately, talking about having a baby?" My heart sank. "Confused?" I repeated, trying to steady my tone. "Aunt May, I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine." But even as I spoke, I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the pity, the disbelief. The seed of doubt Brielle had planted was already taking root. Over the next week, the phone calls multiplied. Old friends reached out, just to check in, their voices too careful, their questions too rehearsed. Even Nora, my sister, my one source of calm, looked at me differently during our next visit. "Judy," she said gently, "Brielle's been saying some things that you might be pretending." "Pretending?" I asked, stunned. She told people you've been carrying around fake sonogram pictures, Nora admitted reluctantly. That you're struggling to accept reality. I could barely breathe. Nora, she went through my purse. That photo was real. The doctor confirmed it. I believe you, Nora said softly. But her eyes said something else, something uncertain. Brielle's words had done their damage. Suddenly every smile felt condescending, every conversation tinged with suspicion. When I tried to explain the truth, they listened with sympathetic nods, the kind reserved for someone fragile, not someone telling the truth. I caught sight of myself in the mirror one morning, exhausted and pale. My stomach wasn't showing yet. Even I could admit I didn't look pregnant. Without proof, my miracle had become a story no one believed. Meanwhile, Brielle's campaign of cruelty grew bolder. She started telling family friends I was going through a late-life breakdown, that I was buying baby items off the internet and calling them gifts from God. It would have been laughable if it didn't hurt so much. I began avoiding gatherings altogether. I didn't want to face the sideways glances or the whispered gossip. Instead, I spent evenings at home, writing in my journal, pouring out words I couldn't say aloud. If my child ever asks why I stayed quiet, I wrote one night, tears dripping onto the page, I'll tell them love sometimes means silence, because some truths are too precious to defend to those who'll never understand. Dr. Fenton noticed the toll the stress was taking on me. You need to stay calm, Judith, she warned during my next visit. Your blood pressure's creeping. Up. Promise me you'll avoid any conflict. I promised. But conflict seemed to find me anyway. One afternoon, I got a call from the clinic. The receptionist sounded flustered. Mrs. Owens, we just wanted to verify something. Your daughter called earlier about your condition. My breath caught. My daughter? Yes, she said her name was Brielle. She asked for details about your treatment. We, of course, couldn't disclose anything without your consent. My hand shook as I gripped the phone. Thank you, I said tightly. That woman is not my daughter. When I hung up, I felt sick. Brielle had crossed a line, pretending to be family to invade my privacy, but her plan backfired in a small, unexpected way. By calling the clinic, she learned just enough to confirm that I was pregnant, that my miracle was real. I imagined her face when she realized the truth, the twist of envy, the disbelief that something good could happen to me and not her. And just like that, her cruelty deepened. She began spreading new rumors, that I wasn't pregnant at all, but trying to buy a baby from a surrogate, that I was telling people it was mine to gain sympathy, that I'd gone off the deep end. It was breathtaking, how quickly lies replaced facts. Even Nora started hesitating when I mentioned doctor appointments, changing the subject instead of asking questions. Each night I sat in the quiet glow of my bedside lamp, staring at the sonogram photo and whispering, they can think what they want. I know the truth. But my confidence was starting to crack. I felt isolated, cornered by whispers I couldn't silence. Then came the moment that pushed Brielle's jealousy from words into something darker. I was reviewing some old paperwork one evening when I realized my late mother's modest inheritance fund, a savings account I'd been quietly adding to, was still active. I'd been planning to use it for the baby's future, medical care, maybe college someday. I had mentioned it once, years ago, in passing, during a family conversation. A few days later, Nora called with a warning in her voice. Brielle was asking about Mom's account, she said. She said she's worried you're spending it on your fantasy. My stomach twisted. Of course she'd found out. Of course she'd use it against me. That night, I sat in bed, the house silent around me. I stared at the journal beside me, unable to write. For the first time in months, I felt fear creep in. Not for myself, but for the peace I'd fought to keep. Because I knew Brielle. She wasn't done. Envy had turned to obsession, and obsession always demanded destruction. As I turned off the lamp, her last words replayed in my mind from that day she found the photo. She's not keeping this from me. Not after everything. Now, I finally understood what she meant. She didn't just want to ruin my joy. She wanted to take it. Brielle decides to take everything from Judith, her peace, her baby, and her money. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of quiet day that used to bring me peace. The air was cool, sunlight streaming through the curtains as I folded tiny baby clothes I'd ordered online, soft yellows and creams, each one a small act of faith. I was humming to myself when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Aunt May stood there, clutching her handbag tightly, her expression unreadable. Behind her, Brielle's car idled at the curb. My stomach twisted instantly. "Judith," Aunt May said, stepping inside. "We need to talk." I gestured for her to sit, my hands already shaking. "Of course, what's wrong?" She sighed, eyes darting around my living room, landing on the folded baby clothes on the table. "Honey, the family's worried about you. Brielle told us what's been going on." My breath caught. "And what exactly has she been telling you?" "That you've been pretending," she said softly. "That you're carrying around fake sonogram photos and talking to yourself about a baby that doesn't exist." Her words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my knees weaken as I gripped the edge of the couch for support. "That's not true," I managed to whisper. "Aunt May, I am pregnant." Dr. Fenton confirmed it. I've had appointments, ultrasounds, everything. But she only looked at me with pity, the kind reserved for the fragile and the broken. "Judith, sweetheart, you've always wanted this so badly. Maybe it's just gotten confused in your mind." Something inside me snapped. My voice rose, trembling but fierce. "Why can't anyone just let me have this joy?" I shouted, tears stinging my eyes. "Why does everyone have to tear it away from me?" Aunt May flinched, startled by my outburst. "I'm only trying to help," she murmured, but I could see it in her eyes. She didn't believe me. When she left, she patted my arm gently and said she'd pray for me. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching her car disappear down the street. Brielle sat in the passenger seat, smirking at me through the window, before they turned the corner. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. Every tear felt like a piece of my soul breaking apart. I realized then that I needed distance, from all of them, from the whispers, the accusations, the cruelty. I stopped answering calls. I blocked Brielle's number. Even Nora, though she meant well, I told I needed time alone. "Just for a while," I said, though the truth was I didn't know when or if I'd ever be ready to see them again. But Brielle didn't stop. She never did. Within weeks, I started noticing strange looks from people around town. The cashier at the grocery store hesitated before speaking to me. My neighbor waved, but with awkwardness in his smile. I overheard snippets of gossip at the coffee shop, words like unstable and obsessed. And then came the email from my supervisor at the library where I'd worked for nearly 20 years. It was short, almost clinical. "Judith, given your recent health challenges, we think it would be best for you to take an extended medical leave to focus on your well-being." I read it 3 times, my hands trembling. There had been no health challenges, just rumors. Rumors that Brielle had spread like wildfire until they burned away what little normalcy I had left. Alone in my house, the silence grew oppressive. My once peaceful home felt haunted by memories, by loss, by the echo of Brielle's lies. Then one morning, I woke to a dull pain in my lower abdomen. At first, I thought it was stress, but by evening, the cramps had worsened, sharp and relentless. Panic rose inside me as I called Dr. Fenton's office. "Judith," she said firmly after I explained the symptoms, "you need to come in right away. Try to stay calm. Stress can make this worse." I hung up and pressed a trembling hand to my belly. "Please," I whispered, "please stay with me, little one." The next day, Nora called. Her voice was shaky. "Brielle heard you weren't feeling well," she said. "She told me maybe this will finally make you see reason." I went silent. That was the moment I knew. Brielle was taking satisfaction in my suffering. My pain was her proof that she'd been right all along, but she wasn't done. Not yet. A few days later, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, 2 people stood there, one in a medical uniform, the other holding a clipboard. "Mrs. Owens," the woman said carefully, "we received a report expressing concern for your mental health. We'd like to ask you a few questions." My blood ran cold. "A report?" I asked. "From who?" They wouldn't say, but I knew. Of course I knew. Within hours, I was at the county clinic, sitting in a small white room, while a social worker and a psychiatrist spoke in low, measured tones. They asked if I was delusional, if I'd been under undue stress, if I believed things that weren't real. I told them about Dr. Fenton, about the test results, about my appointments, But without the documents in front of me, I sounded desperate, not credible. They promised it was just a precaution, a short evaluation, but I knew better. It was humiliation, wrapped in professionalism. By the second night, I sat alone in the dimly lit room, exhausted and hollow. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with despair. Then I heard it. Outside my door, a familiar voice, low, clipped, unmistakable. Brielle. She needs help, she was saying to someone. She's dangerous to herself. You should see what she's been doing. My heart pounded as I crept closer to the door. Another voice, the doctor's, responded, calm but skeptical. And you are? I'm her daughter, Brielle said smoothly. I just want her to get the care she needs. I pressed a hand over my mouth to stifle the cry that rose in my throat. She had done it again. Invaded my life, twisted the truth, and this time she'd brought me to my breaking point. While in the clinic, Judith overhears Brielle talking to the doctor outside her room. I stood frozen on the other side of the clinic door, my heart hammering against my ribs. The thin wall did nothing to muffle Brielle's voice. It sliced through the silence, sharp and cruel. Just admit she's crazy, she said, her tone dripping with venom. She doesn't deserve to raise a baby. You should have seen her house. Baby clothes everywhere, talking to herself like some lonely old woman. She needs help before she hurts herself. The words twisted in my stomach like knives. I pressed my palm to my mouth to keep from crying out. Then came another voice, the doctor's, calm but firm. Miss Brielle, is it? I don't know who you think you are, but we have privacy laws here. You can't speak about a patient's condition or spread false claims. Brielle huffed, her voice rising. I'm her daughter. I'm trying to protect her. The doctor's patience snapped. That's enough. You need to leave now, or we'll have security escort you out. There was a pause, then the sharp echo of Brielle's heels clacking angrily down the hallway. When the footsteps faded, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. My hands trembled, a mix of rage and heartbreak coursing through me. I sank onto the edge of the narrow bed, staring at the sterile white floor. My mind replayed every cruel word she'd said, every manipulation, every moment I'd given her the benefit of the doubt. But this, pretending to be my daughter, trying to have me institutionalized, that was unforgivable. The next morning, a nurse came into my room with a soft smile. Mrs. Owens, you're being discharged. The evaluation came back clean. You're perfectly healthy, mentally and physically. I almost laughed. You mean I'm sane enough to be believed? Her eyes softened. Sometimes people like her do more harm than they realize. But I knew Brielle realized exactly what she was doing. Later that afternoon, I met privately with Dr. Fenton, who had been contacted by the clinic about my situation. She sat across from me, concern etched across her face. Judith, she said gently, I need to tell you something. Someone's been trying to interfere with your medical records. I didn't need to ask who. Brielle, I said bitterly. Dr. Fenton nodded. She's called my office several times, claiming to be a family member. She wanted to know your status, details about your treatment, things we could never share. We reported her behavior, but I wanted you to hear it directly from me. For a long moment, I didn't speak. My throat tightened, but I refused to cry, not this time. She's always done this, I finally whispered. Ever since we were kids, she'd lie, twist things, make me look weak so she could feel powerful. Dr. Fenton reached out, resting a comforting hand over mine. Then maybe it's time you stop giving her power. Her words lingered long after I left her office. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the soft glow of the nightlight beside me, I made a silent promise. No more tears, no more begging to be believed. From now on, I decide who hurts me. The next morning, I started putting that promise into action. I gathered every text message, every voicemail, every snippet of proof I had of Brielle's harassment. I downloaded call logs, backed up recordings of our conversations, everything. If she wanted to keep playing games, I would let her. But this time, I'd keep the score. I contacted a lawyer the following week, explaining my situation in calm, deliberate detail. He listened carefully, then said, You've been through a lot, Mrs. Owens. Let's make sure your child and your peace are protected. We drafted new documents, an updated will, legal guardianship plans, property protections. I even added security cameras around the house, just in case. Each action made me feel a little stronger, a little more in control. For the first time in months, I wasn't just surviving Brielle's cruelty. I was preparing for it. Then, as if on cue, she called. Her number flashed across my phone screen, her name glowing like a warning. I let it ring twice before answering, curiosity overcoming caution. "Judith," she began, her tone falsely sweet. "We need to talk." "I don't think we do," I replied calmly. "You don't understand," she said quickly. "I was just trying to help. Everything got out of hand. Please, can we meet?" I almost laughed. The audacity of her pretending to care after trying to have me declared unstable was staggering. "Brielle," I said evenly, "I know what you did. The calls, the lies, the clinic." There was silence on the other end, then a small, fake laugh. "You're paranoid, Judith. You need rest. You've been through a lot." I ended the call without another word. After that, I stopped answering her texts, her calls, her messages on social media. The silence between us became a wall, one she couldn't climb. Weeks passed. My belly began to show, a small, gentle curve beneath my clothes. Every morning I'd rest my hands on it, feeling the faintest flutter of life inside. It was enough to keep me grounded, to remind me that not all battles needed to be fought with words. Sometimes silence was the sharpest weapon. One evening, as I stood before the mirror brushing my hair, I caught my reflection smiling, soft, tired, but strong. I placed my hand over my growing belly and whispered, "You'll see soon enough." Because I wasn't just waiting for my baby anymore. I was waiting for the moment Brielle realized she had finally lost the only thing she ever wanted, control over me. Judith smiled softly, looking at her growing belly, saying, "You'll see soon enough." The pain started just after midnight, a deep, twisting ache that wrapped around my abdomen and wouldn't let go. At first, I told myself it was just exhaustion. I had been pushing too hard again, reorganizing the nursery, washing tiny clothes that smelled faintly of lavender. But when the pain came again, sharper this time, I knew. Something was happening. Too soon. "Please," I whispered, clutching my belly. "Not yet. Stay with me, sweetheart." But the contractions didn't stop. Within an hour, I was being rushed to the hospital. The city lights blurred past through the ambulance window as I focused on breathing. Slow, steady, just like Dr. Fenton had taught me. My body felt fragile, ancient, and powerful all at once. I was terrified, but beneath the fear was something stronger. Hope. When we arrived, Dr. Fenton was already waiting. "Judith," she said firmly, gripping my hand, "listen to me. We're going to take care of you. Just breathe. You're not alone." The delivery room buzzed with movement. Nurses checking monitors, IV lines being set up, machines humming softly in the background. I could feel my pulse in my throat, each beat a reminder that this was real, that my long, painful was reaching its peak. The contractions came harder now, tearing through me in waves that left me gasping. Somewhere in the chaos, I caught sight of Dr. Fenton's calm eyes. "You're strong, Judith," she said. "You've waited your whole life for this. You can do it." I wanted to believe her, but my body felt like it was giving up. The pain blurred my vision, and the room dimmed around the edges. I heard snippets of the medical team talking. Her blood pressure's dropping. We need to stabilize her now. Prep for emergency intervention. A cold fear gripped me. My baby. My miracle. What if this was how it ended? Tears slid down my temples as I whispered into the chaos, "Please, let me meet my child." Everything went quiet for a moment, as if the world was holding its breath with me. Then came the voice I had prayed for. Dr. Fenton's steady tone, full of certainty. "We're almost there, Judith. Just one more push." I gave everything I had left. The room seemed to spin, my body trembling with exhaustion. And then I heard it. A cry. Sharp, strong, and alive. The sound broke through the haze like sunlight through a storm. My heart surged, and suddenly the tears wouldn't stop. "Is she?" I managed to whisper, my voice cracking. Dr. Fenton smiled through her mask. "She's here. She's perfect." The nurse placed the tiny bundle in my arms, and time stopped. She was so small, her skin soft and pink, her little fist curling as if reaching for me. My miracle, my proof that hope was never foolish. I stared at her through tears, tracing the outline of her nose, her delicate eyelashes, the rhythm of her breathing. "Hi, baby," I whispered. "You did it. You made it." Dr. Fenton leaned close, her voice soft but full of pride. "Congratulations, Judith. You did the impossible." I smiled weakly. "No," I said, my voice trembling. "We did." When the nurse asked what I'd like to name her, I didn't hesitate. "Faith," I said, smiling through tears, "because she's the reason I still believe." The name felt right. It wasn't just a word. It was a promise, a truth forged in pain and perseverance. For hours, I lay in that hospital bed, staring at my daughter. Every breath she took seemed to heal a part of me that had been broken for decades. The machines beeped softly in the background, a lullaby of survival. Later that morning, Dr. Fenton checked on us one last time before leaving for her rounds. "She's strong," she said with a smile. "So are you. Go rest, Mama." The word Mama lingered in the air like a prayer answered. I repeated it quietly to myself, tasting the unfamiliar joy of it. When visiting hours came, Nora arrived first, her eyes filling instantly with tears. "Oh, Judith," she whispered, touching Faith's tiny hand. "She's beautiful." I could tell she meant it. For once there was no pity, no doubt, only awe. Other family members sent texts, brief congratulations that felt more obligatory than heartfelt, but one name was missing. Brielle, not a single word from her, not even a cold, sarcastic message. It was almost peaceful without her voice invading my joy. For the first time in years, I felt untouchable, like her bitterness couldn't reach me. That evening, as I lay with Faith sleeping against my chest, I decided to share one photo, just one. I posted it online with a simple caption: "Welcome to the world, Faith Owens. Miracles are real." The picture was soft and tender, my wrinkled hand holding her tiny one, the hospital bracelet visible on both our wrists. I turned off my phone afterward, wanting the world to see the miracle, but not to intrude. Hours passed. The room grew quiet except for Faith's gentle breaths. I must have drifted off for a while because when I woke, the glow from my phone screen lighting the sheet, I picked it up, half expecting sweets from Nora or the nurse. But instead, there was a single notification, an unread message from Brielle. I hesitated before opening it. My pulse quickened. It was short, only one sentence. "That baby should have been mine." My blood ran cold. I stared at the words, my breath catching in my throat. Somewhere deep down, I had known she wouldn't stay silent forever, but reading those words, I understood something terrifying. Her envy wasn't just about me anymore. Now it had a target. Hours later, Judith receives a chilling message from Brielle. "That baby should have been mine." The message haunted me for days. That baby should have been mine. No matter how many times I reread it, the chill in my chest wouldn't fade. I blocked her number, changed my locks, even asked Nora to stop sharing any updates about me. I wanted to believe that cutting her off completely would be enough, that maybe finally Brielle would accept defeat and move on. But peace never lasted long where Brielle was concerned. It happened 3 weeks after I brought Faith home. The morning had been quiet, sunlight spilling through the curtains, Faith sleeping peacefully in her bassinet beside the couch. I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. I froze. Few people visited unannounced anymore, and the last person I expected or wanted to see was standing on my porch. Brielle. She was dressed neatly, her hair styled, makeup done as if she'd come for a family portrait. She held a small bouquet of flowers and a practiced smile. "Judith," she said softly, her voice sugar-sweet, "can we talk?" Every instinct screamed no, but curiosity and exhaustion made me hesitate. Maybe she was finally ready to make peace. Maybe she was here to apologize. I wanted to believe that. God help me, I did. I cracked the door open. "What do you want, Brielle?" Her eyes flicked past me, toward the sound of Faith's gentle coo from inside. "Just to talk," she said quickly. "Please, 5 minutes, I promise." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. 5 minutes, I said, my tone firm. She entered slowly, looking around as though inspecting the place, her gaze landing on the baby bassinet. "So this is her," she whispered, walking closer. I moved instinctively, stepping between her and Faith. "You can stay there," I said quietly. "You can see her from here." For a moment, her expression softened. She's beautiful, she said, almost to herself. Looks a bit like you did when you were younger. Her voice cracked slightly, and I almost saw the cousin I once loved, the girl who used to braid my hair and laugh with me on long summer nights. But the warmth vanished as quickly as it came. Her lips curled into something darker. You really did it, she said coldly. You actually think this is fair? That you get this? After everything? I frowned. What are you talking about? She took a step closer, her voice trembling with anger. You stole my life. You couldn't have children your whole life, and now, suddenly, you do? You took what was supposed to be mine. I stared at her in disbelief. Brielle, this isn't about you. It never was. She laughed bitterly. Of course it is. You were always the sad, quiet one. The one everyone pitied. And me? I did everything right. I got married, had my kids, built my life. But people still look at you with sympathy and love, and me like I'm some villain. Her words were venom. I held Faith closer, feeling her tiny heartbeat against my chest. You can't steal what's given by grace, I said softly but firmly. This child isn't something I took. She's something I was, blessed with. Something in Brielle's eyes snapped. Her face twisted, her voice rising to a shriek. Blessed? Don't talk to me about blessings. You don't deserve this, Judith. You can't even take care of yourself. You're too old, too fragile. That baby belongs with someone who can actually raise her. I took a slow step back, one hand behind my back as I reached for my phone on the table. My thumb slid across the screen, opening the voice recorder app, and I hit record. Brielle, I said carefully, my voice calm despite the storm inside me. You need to leave, now. But she didn't move. She took another step forward instead, her voice trembling with rage. Maybe I'll just call social services, tell them you're unfit. Or better yet, maybe I'll take her myself. You'd never survive without her. That was the moment I stopped being afraid. Get out, I said sharply. We stood there, two women bound by blood but divided by hate, staring each other down in silence. Faith stirred softly, sensing the tension in the air. Then the shouting started. Brielle's voice carried through the open window as she screamed accusations, calling me a thief, a liar, a fraud. My heart pounded, not from fear this time, but from fury. Neighbors began to peek from their porches, concern etched on their faces. I saw Mr. Lewis, my elderly neighbor, pull out his phone, probably calling the police. When the flashing lights appeared minutes later, Brielle's voice faltered. Two officers stepped out, one approaching cautiously. Ma'am, he said to me, is everything all right here? Before I could speak, Brielle jumped in. She's unstable, she cried, tears streaming down her face in a convincing act. She attacked me. I came here to help her, and she tried to take my phone and... I interrupted, my voice steady. Officer, I have everything recorded. Her head snapped toward me. What? I held up my phone, still recording, the red light blinking like justice itself. Every word you said since you walked through that door. The officers exchanged glances. One of them asked, Would you like to play it for us? I pressed play. The room filled with Brielle's voice, her threats, her jealousy, her claim that my baby belonged to her. Every cruel word echoed back at her like a mirror she couldn't escape. When the recording ended, silence hung heavy. The officers turned to Brielle. Ma'am, I think you should come with us. Her face crumpled into fury. You'll regret this, Judith, she screamed as they led her toward the door. You'll regret it. But I didn't. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the victim of her cruelty. I felt powerful, unshaken, free. Faith began to cry softly in my arms, and I rocked her gently, whispering, It's over, baby. It's finally over. Or at least I thought it was. Because as the door closed behind Brielle, I couldn't shake the feeling that her story and her hatred wasn't finished yet. Brielle is taken away screaming, You'll regret this, Judith. It's strange how peace can feel so loud after a storm. The silence isn't empty. It's full of lessons, memories, and tiny reminders that I survived. It's been 6 months since that night. 6 months since the flashing red and blue lights, since Brielle's voice echoed in rage as the police took her away. 6 months since I finally drew a line she couldn't cross. Now the house is quiet again. No shouting, no phone calls. No whispered gossip outside my door. Just me and my daughter, Faith. I stand by the living room window, gently rocking her in my arms. Morning sunlight filters through the curtains, painting golden ribbons across the floor. Her small body is warm against my chest, her breathing soft and steady. Every few moments, she stirs, and I feel her tiny hand grasp my finger. This is what peace feels like. Sometimes I still think about everything Brielle did. The lies, the manipulation, the way she tried to twist my joy into madness. There were days I thought she might actually break me, but she didn't. The court handled everything after the incident. With the recording as proof, Brielle was charged with harassment and slander. The restraining order was granted without hesitation. She's legally barred from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my home. For the first time, her cruelty had consequences. Nora visits often now. She was horrified by what Brielle had done, and guilt consumed her for not believing me sooner. But I forgave her. I knew she hadn't meant harm. She'd just been caught in the web Brielle spun. We sit together sometimes, watching Faith sleep, and Nora will whisper, "She looks like you, Judy. She's got your stubborn little chin." We laugh about it, and I realize how much lighter laughter feels when it isn't shadowed by pain. When Faith smiled for the first time, a real, toothless, pure smile, I cried. Not out of sadness, but relief. That tiny grin was proof that love had won. All the years of loneliness, the cruel words, the loss, they all led here, to this moment, to her. One afternoon, as Faith napped, I opened the drawer where my old journals were kept, the ones filled with heartbreak, with hope, with every letter I'd written to a baby I thought I'd never meet. The pages were soft from age, stained with tears that had long dried. I thought about burning them once, years ago, to rid myself of the past, but now I saw their worth. They weren't reminders of pain. They were evidence of endurance. So I boxed them up and brought them to a local support group for older women trying to conceive. When I handed them to the counselor, she looked up, surprised. "Are you sure you want to give these away?" "Yes," I said softly. "They belong to women who still need to believe it's not too late." Leaving the HINA journals behind felt like closing a chapter. Not with bitterness, but with peace. A few weeks later, I received a call from Dr. Fenton. "Judith," she said warmly, "we're hosting a seminar on late-age pregnancy and resilience. Would you be willing to speak?" At first, I hesitated. Public speaking had never been my strength. But then I looked down at Faith, smiling in her playpen, and I realized I owed it to her, and to myself, to share the story that nearly broke me, but didn't. So I agreed. The day of the seminar, the same clinic that had once felt like a battlefield now felt like home. I stood at the podium, Faith in my arms, her head resting against my shoulder as she slept. Rows of women filled the seats, some young, some older, all carrying that same quiet hope I once held. I began simply. "My name is Judith Owens," I said, "and at 56, I was told I'd never be a mother." The room went still. Every pair of eyes watched me, waiting. I told them about the heartbreak, the doubt, the mockery, and the miracle that followed, about how I'd been called delusional, unstable, foolish, and how in the end, love proved stronger than all of it. "I used to think motherhood was about biology," I said, glancing down at Faith. "But now I know it's about courage. It's about waking up every day and choosing hope, even when everyone tells you it's too late." Applause filled the room, quiet at first, then louder, spreading like light through darkness. I looked out over the audience and saw tears in their eyes, not of pity, but recognition. When it was over, several women approached me. One whispered, "You gave me back my faith." Another said, "You made me believe it's still possible." As I left the stage, Dr. Fenton hugged me tightly. "You've come a long way, Judith. I hope you see now. You didn't just get your miracle. You became one." That night, at home, I sat by the window again, Faith asleep in my arms. The moonlight fell across her tiny face, her lips curled in a faint dream smile. I thought about everything Brielle had said, every cruel word meant to break me, and I smiled. "So when Brielle said I'd never be a mother," I whispered, brushing a kiss across Faith's forehead, "she was right in one way, because now I'm so much more. Life didn't give me the motherhood I once dreamed of. It gave me something deeper. It taught me that miracles don't arrive when we beg for them. They come when we finally stop doubting ourselves. Brielle's voice used to haunt me, but now it's just an echo I've learned to forgive. Because when I look at my daughter's face, I don't see what I lost. I see everything I became. And maybe she was right. I was never meant to be just a mother. I was meant to be a survivor. If my story touched something inside you, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who still believes their time has passed. Because maybe their miracle is closer than they think. And if you believe that some blessings arrive when the world least expects them, hit that like and subscribe, and stay with me for the next chapter. Tell me, honestly, if life gave you one last chance at a miracle, would you have the courage to take it?